Hey, teachers, do you ever wonder how to get your third, fourth, and fifth graders to really dig deeper? To understand not just what an author writes, but why they write it? Well, you're in the right place. We're about to break down Standard 3.5 TC2 and turn it into a practical lesson you can literally use in your classroom tomorrow.
So let's start with the big question, right? It's one thing for our students to read the words on the page, but how do we get them to see the person behind those words? Their beliefs, their feelings, that unique lens they see the world through. That is the real goal here.
And to get there, we've got a simple 6-part game plan. First, we'll demystify the standard itself. Then, we'll get our classrooms ready for success. After that, we'll walk step by step through that classic I do, we do, you do model. And of course, we'll wrap up by talking about how to know they've really got it. Ready? Let's jump in.
All right, first things first. Let's break down exactly what this standard is asking our students to do. No confusing jargon, just what's the goal?
Okay, so at its core, author's perspective is just that lens the writer sees a topic through. And our job? It's to turn our students into little text detectives, hunting for those clues that reveal the author's personal viewpoint and how it totally shapes what they write.
So this is what we're aiming for. These are the big learning goals. We want students to be able to describe an author's perspective, sure, but also to compare it with other authors writing about the same topic. And the really crucial part is getting them to explain how that perspective influences the text, using solid evidence to back it all up.
Okay, so with that goal in mind, let's talk about setting ourselves up for success. Because we all know a great lesson always starts with some good prep work.
A really fantastic way to kick things off is by creating a shared language. An anchor chart like this one with these simple, kid-friendly definitions becomes this awesome reference tool that you and your students can point back to through the whole unit. It's like a home base for the vocabulary.
All right, this is where the magic really starts to happen. The I do part of the lesson. This is our moment to model our own thinking out loud, to show students exactly how a skilled reader actually uncovers an author's perspective.
We're going to use this really clear 5-step strategy called the perspective compare. It starts with pre-teaching the vocab we just talked about, then moves into reading 2 different texts on the same topic, modeling how you hunt for clues, and then organizing all those thoughts in a simple T-chart.
Now, the secret sauce to a great I do is the think aloud. You're literally just narrating the detective work happening inside your own head. So as you're reading, you pause and you say something just like this. It makes that invisible thinking process totally visible for your students.
And to make that thinking even more concrete, you can have your students become clue hunters. As you're doing your think aloud, you can physically mark up the text under a document camera with some simple symbols like these. It gives them a really clear visual task that they can copy when it's their turn.
Okay, let's transition into the we do. You've shown them how it's done, now it's time to invite them in to be your co-detectives. So for this part, you'll want to use 2 short texts on the same topic, but with totally different perspectives. Like one article that paints wolves as dangerous and another that frames them as endangered. Then, together as a class, you fill out a T-chart just like this one, guiding students to pinpoint the author's main belief and the exact clue words that give it away.
So during this shared reading time, you're really acting as the guide on the side. After you read a key sentence, you just pause and you ask these targeted questions. A prompt like this one doesn't give away the answer. It pushes students to look closely at specific word choices, like majestic and wise, and make their own inference.
All right, it's time for that final step in our instructional model, the you do. This is where we start to gradually release that responsibility and let the students take the lead in their small groups. But remember, independent practice does not mean unsupported practice. A simple scaffold, like providing sentence stems, whether they're on the board or a handout, can be an absolute game changer. It gives every single student an entry point to that academic conversation and keeps their discussions focused.
So as you're walking around and listening in on those student groups, this is what you're hoping to hear. Notice how both of these examples cite specific evidence from the text to prove their claim. That second example is even more advanced. It shows they're picking up on a more nuanced or even a conflicting perspective. That is a huge win.
And that brings us to our final and maybe most important step, assessment. How do we actually know that our students have mastered the skill and are ready to apply it on their own?
Think of this slide right here as your mastery checklist. When you consistently see and hear your students doing these things without your help, you can feel really confident that they've got it. They're not just finding the perspective,
They're explaining it and defending it with evidence.
And of course, you can't beat a quick exit ticket for a formative check. A simple prompt like this gives you a 2-minute snapshot of who's on track and maybe who might need a little extra support tomorrow.
And there you have it, a complete game plan for teaching authors' perspective. We've gone through the big picture goals all the way down to the nitty-gritty classroom details. The only thing left now is to give it a try. So what exciting topic are you going to use to get your students clue hunting this week? Good luck!